Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're setting our sights on something really focused and I think incredibly powerful. We're going to explore a single text, Psalm 93.
Hmm.
And this isn't going to be just a quick flyover of a chapter. We really want to do a verse-by-verse excavation of these 5 short lines because, they hold what feels like the architectural blueprints for finding true, unshakable stability.
That's it, exactly. That's the mission. For anyone listening who is just tired of chasing temporary fixes for that deep-seated uncertainty.
Which is everywhere right now.
It's everywhere, whether it's political, financial, personal. This ancient text provides, I think, the ultimate answer. It's a foundational declaration of God's current, active, and completely sovereign rule.
Yeah.
And the commentary we're going to be drawing from, which is provided by the UNFIJ team,
Yeah.
it really frames this psalm not just as some beautiful poem,
Right.
but as a teaching document, a guide on the actual source of all cosmic and spiritual security.
So our goal, then, is to really get into the fabric of this psalm. We want to look at the majesty, the eternity, the opposition that's presented, the might, and finally, the certitude that's found within it.
And extract knowledge that isn't just, intellectually satisfying,
No.
but deeply actionable. We want to help you move beyond just a simple head nod to establishing a truly unshakable confidence in the one who, as the New Testament says, holds all things together.
Okay, so the core theological weight of Psalm 93 is really all centered on one truth, isn't it? That the Lord reigns, but not in the future.
Now, right now. His reign is the foundation for all order, and really getting a grasp on that is the only pathway to real stability. So we have to start where the psalmist starts.
With that initial bold declaration of sovereignty.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this opening verse then. As you said, it doesn't begin with a suggestion or a wish or even a plea. It starts with this immediate, almost thunderous statement of current objective fact.
The verb tense is so strong. It's present and it's ongoing.
Just listen to the power in this. This is straight from the King James Version. Psalm chapter 93, verse 1. The Lord reigneth. He is clothed with majesty. The Lord is clothed with strength wherewith he hath girded himself. The world also established that it cannot be moved.
The reality is all packed into those first 3 words. The Lord reigneth. And like you said, it's active. It is happening at this very moment. But the detail the psalmist gives us about how he reigns, that's just crucial.
It's this imagery, isn't it? A monarch preparing for office, but with a divine twist.
Yes, a divine twist is the perfect way to put it. You see a king putting on his royal robes.
Yeah.
But, and this is the key difference, unlike any human royalty, where the robes and the crown are symbols that are external to the person.
Things that can be taken away.
Exactly. They can be lost or stolen. But God's garments are his very essence. They're not just attire that can be removed or damaged.
Right. The text says he is clothed with majesty and strength. Let's talk about those words.
We have to. The Hebrew word for majesty, it's gone. And it conveys this idea of loftiness, a glorious excellence, and even an insurmountable pride, but in the sense of divine honor.
Okay.
And then strength, that's Oz, and it's not just talking about potential power, like a battery sitting on a shelf. This is active, robust, and often, aggressive might.
So he doesn't just acquire these for his coronation.
Not at all. They are inherent attributes that simply define who the reigning God is. They are him.
And that distinction is it's everything, isn't it? Especially for a listener who's trying to find solid ground.
It's paramount, because if a human king loses his army or his treasury, his majesty just evaporates.
It's gone.
It's gone. But if God is majesty, he can't be diminished. But then there's this other detail, this fascinating phrase about how he wears this strength, wherewith he hath girded himself. What's the significance of being girded?
It sounds like such an archaic term, but it's so important.
It's so important because that phrase, hath girded himself, is where we see the active nature of his sovereignty. In the ancient Near East, kings or warriors, they wear these long, flowing ceremonial robes.
Right, which look great, but are completely impractical for doing anything.
Completely. So to gird oneself meant you would gather up all those flowing garments, the garments of state, and you'd secure them tightly around your waist with a belt or a girdle.
So it's a deliberate action. It signals, I'm ready to work. It's the king moving from just a passive status to active, decisive rule.
Precisely. It signals a dynamic reign. He is prepared for action. He's prepared for battle. He's prepared to enforce his will immediately and without any impediment.
Wow.
And this is a strong point made in the commentary from the You Need Faith in Jesus team. They emphasize that the King of the universe is not some distant deist watchmaker who wound things up and walked away.
Right, who's just letting it all play out.
No. He is actively involved, he's ready for work, and he's enforcing order through his inherent strength.
Yeah.
He's girded himself for the task.
Okay, so let's put it together. We have the reigning king. He is clothed in his own inherent power, and he is girded, ready for action. So what is the immediate, tangible effect of this active, sovereign governance on the world that we actually live in?
Well, the final, wonderful clause of the verse gives us the answer. The world also established that it cannot be moved. The stability of the physical cosmos itself is the direct, intended result of the Lord reigning.
Let's stay on that word, established. In the King James, it sounds so final. But what does the Hebrew root kun really imply here?
Oh, it's rich. Kun carries the meaning of being firmly fixed, secure, and ready. It suggests not just that something was put in place and left there.
Like a statue.
Exactly. It's not static. It suggests active maintenance and a fundamental security of being. The world isn't stable because of its own inherent structure or because of, the laws of physics alone. It's stable because God's power is actively, continuously in this very moment, rendering it firm.
So if the king were to relax his girded strength for even a second,
The whole thing would dissolve into chaos. The universe would just come apart at the seams.
and this immediately connects us, as our outline suggested, straight to the New Testament. It draws a direct line of authority from this reigning God to the Son. The stability being described here isn't just an abstract concept.
No, it's a person.
It's a person.
Absolutely correct. The New Testament affirms this active role of the reigning God in creation maintenance, and it specifically attributes this sustaining power to Christ. Let's just look at Colossians chapter 1, verse 17.
Okay.
It says, "And he is before all things, and by him all things consist."
That word consist, it's sunistemi in the Greek, and it is an astonishingly technical word. It means to stand together or to cohere. It's almost a term of physics.
It is. It implies that every molecule, every gravitational constant, the very integrity of time itself, all of it is held in active relationship by the power of Christ. He's the glue.
So the technical definition established in Psalm 93 perfectly mirrors the technical definition of consist in Colossians.
It's a perfect match. It's not a passive order. It's an active maintenance program being run by the king who is clothed in strength.
So let's make this practical. When a listener feels their personal world, their finances, their relationships, their health is shaking violently, the profound comfort here, which the You Need Faith in Jesus team commentary really emphasizes, is that stability is an external gift. It is anchored not in the temporary circumstances of your life, but in the unmovable, girded authority of the King whose active hand is holding the entire created order firm.
Yes.
The stability of the universe itself guarantees the potential for stability in your life, no matter what chaos is surrounding you.
And that truth provides such a crucial foundation, because if his reign is the source of our stability right now, it leads to the next question. How far back does this authority go?
Exactly.
And that profound question transitions us so logically into the next verse, which details the timelessness of the throne.
Right. We move now from the present reality of the king's active reign to the deep, eternal basis for that authority. If verse 1 spoke about what he is doing, verse 2 speaks about why he can never be overthrown.
It's about the antiquity, the eternity of the throne itself.
Let's hear this declaration of timelessness. It's Psalm 93, verse 2 in the KJV. Thy throne is established of old, thou art from everlasting.
You see, this verse gives us a kind of two-tiered definition of the king's authority. The first part is that it is established of old. This speaks to historical depth.
Okay.
It means his throne was firmly set in place long, long ago. It predates the history of nations, the rise of empires, the memory of humanity itself. It's a claim to supreme antiquity, showing that his authority has been the controlling factor throughout all of creation's history.
But then the psalmist immediately escalates that claim, doesn't he? He moves beyond just historical depth to ontological reality.
That's it. Thou art from everlasting. This is where the deep dive really begins to feel deep. That phrase, it's mi'olam in the Hebrew. It means from eternity. And that changes the scope completely. We're no longer just talking about ancient historical roots. We're talking about essential, necessary existence.
So God's existence is independent of his creation.
Totally independent. He has no beginning and no end. He's the author of time, not subject to it. He exists outside of the timeline he created.
And when you put that up against human rule, the contrast just becomes incredibly sharp. You can look at the history of human kingship, the pharaohs of Egypt, the Roman Caesars, the great dynasties of China.
Every single one.
Every one of them, no matter how absolute their power seemed at the time, eventually just crumbled to time. Succession crises, external force.
They're all temporal. They're subject to the very time they try to control. But God's reign isn't limited by a calendar or a constitutional term or the passing of generations.
His power isn't dependent on resources or approval ratings.
Not at all. Because he is from everlasting, his authority is absolute, it's unchangeable, and therefore it's entirely reliable for all time.
So, if the king is eternal, then the qualities we just talked about in verse 1, his majesty and his strength, they must also be eternal and unchanging. This concept of divine immutability, it has to be the ultimate stabilizer for the human spirit.
It truly is.
Yeah.
And the You Need Faith in Jesus team really emphasizes this point. This immutability means that the God you're relying on today is the exact same God who performed miracles in the past, the one who dictated the scriptures, and the one who will meet you in the future.
His character isn't evolving.
No, his power isn't waxing and waning, and maybe most importantly for us, his promises, those testimonies we're going to discuss later, they are guaranteed because they're backed by an unchanging eternal king.
This eternal perspective is precisely what the scriptures use over and over again to calm the anxieties of believers who are facing immense trials. It forces us to lift our eyes from the immediate crisis to the one who's standing outside of the timeline.
Absolutely. And the New Testament provides the ultimate bookends to this truth. We find this self-affirmation of eternal sovereignty in the book of Revelation, chapter 1, verse 8. The Lord says, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, saith the Lord, which is and which was and which is to come, the Almighty.
The Alpha and the Omega, the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet. So he encompasses every possible point on the line of history. But he also defines the line itself because he stands before it and after it.
The practical confidence this should instill in us is immense. I mean, since he is sovereign over all history and all eternity, you can have complete, warranted confidence in the one who holds your future.
Because that future isn't defined by chance.
It's defined by the decree of the Almighty who cannot change. So if he made a promise 2,000 years ago, that promise is just as binding and just as guaranteed today because he is from everlasting. And that truth, I think, serves as a powerful shield against existential fear.
That gives us a tremendously stable foundation. We have a king who reigns actively right now and whose reign is built on a non-temporal, eternal foundation. But, and this is the big question, if the world is so firmly established, why does it so often feel like everything is tilting toward chaos? The psalmist is deeply realistic, and he immediately pivots to acknowledge the noise and the reality of opposition in the very next verse.
He has to.
We shift dramatically now. We move from the stillness and the eternity of the throne room to the violent auditory nature of rebellion. The king reigns, yes, but the forces of opposition are not silent.
Far from it.
Let's read verse 3 from the KJV. Psalm 93, verse 3. The floods have lifted up, O Lord, the floods have lifted up their voice, the floods lift up their waves.
And this transition is so crucial for validating the listener's actual experience. The psalmist does not minimize the struggle. He doesn't pretend it's not there. He uses the most potent and terrifying image of chaos available to the ancient world.
The sea.
The untamable, destructive sea and the floods. For them, the sea represented cosmic disorder, the primordial waters of uncreation that were constantly threatening to overwhelm the fragile order of the world.
So we're moving beyond just recognizing a problem. This is a massive existential threat. And the repetition here is it's hypnotic and overwhelming. The floods have lifted up. The floods have lifted up their voice. The floods lift up their waves. Why repeat it 3 times?
That rhetorical device is called anaphora, and it's used to emphasize the relentless nature of the threat. It's not one passing wave that you can just brace for and then it's over.
Right.
No, this is a continuous rising tide. And notice the progression. First, they lifted up a general threat. Then they lift up their voice. They are noisy. They demand attention. They make their own claims of ultimate authority. And then they lift up their waves. Now they have physical destructive power. The chaos is real. It's persistent. And it's intimidatingly loud.
So when we interpret these floods for today, for someone listening right now, they represent all the forces that set themselves against God's established order.
Exactly. The You Need Faith in Jesus team commentary identifies this as being really comprehensive. It could be the rebellion of nations, overt political turmoil, the widespread chaos caused by sin, and of course, spiritual opposition. But we also have to bring it down to the personal level.
The psychological manifestation of these floods.
Yes. For the individual, the floods can manifest as intense anxiety, chronic fear, overwhelming personal debt. It could be the sheer complexity of a health crisis, or just the cultural moment itself.
That constant clamor.
The constant clamor of opposing ideologies and noise that threatens to drown out the voice of truth. They are loud and they feel incredibly mighty.
And often they feel like they are winning. They lift up their voice so loudly that it's all you can hear.
And that's exactly why the psalmist specifically mentions the noise. This is so reminiscent of other prophetic literature. If we look at the prophet Isaiah, chapter 17, verse 12, he uses the very same imagery to describe the roar of nations in rebellion against God.
What does he say?
The prophet speaks of rebellious people, he says. Woe to the multitude of many people, which make a noise like the noise of the seas, and to the rushing of nations that make a rushing like the rushing of mighty waters.
A noise like the noise of the seas. That's it. The noise of political upheaval. The clamor of opposing ideologies, that overwhelming sense that society is just disintegrating into a shouting match. That is the noise of the seas.
It is, and the psalmist validates that experience.
Yeah.
It would be disingenuous for Scripture to proclaim God's reign without also acknowledging the immense, palpable nature of the forces opposing him.
So that validation is really the critical setup for the resolution, isn't it?
It has to be. Our source material insists on this. You have to stare directly at the size of the waves. You have to admit the chaos is real to truly appreciate the magnitude of the king's authority, which is about to be revealed.
It's not an imaginary enemy that the Lord overcomes.
No, it's a real and formidable, though ultimately subordinate power.
Okay. We have established the threat. It's persistent, it's noisy, and it's potentially destructive. Now we finally arrive at the glorious ultimate answer to that chaos.
That's turning point.
This is the hinge of the entire song. After fully acknowledging the volume and the power of the chaos, the noisy floods lifting up their waves, the psalmist pivots with an immediate and absolute statement of God's overwhelming superiority.
Mm-hmm.
Can you quote that declaration for us from the KJV? It's Psalm 93, verse 4.
The Lord on high is mightier than the noise of many waters, yea, than the mighty waves of the sea.
The declaration is just. It's uncompromising. The opposition is loud and mighty, the text admits that. But God is declared mightier.
And the use of that comparative word, mightier, isn't meant to suggest it's a close contest.
Yeah.
It implies God makes the power of the floods look completely negligible in comparison. It's not even the same category.
And the psalmist grounds the superiority in his position. He is on high. That's a physical and a metaphorical statement of supreme authority. He is looking down on all the chaos below him, utterly untouched and unimpeded by it.
He doesn't struggle against the waves.
He transcends them.
He transcends them. And if you think about this in the ancient world, where sea gods and chaos monsters were real fears that people had,
Right.
this verse is essentially dismantling the entire cosmological framework of competing deities. It's saying there is no other god, there is no chaos force whose might can even begin to compare to the Lord. His power is the final immutable reality of the universe.
But this immense transcendent power wasn't just left up in the heavens. It was brought down to earth and physically demonstrated by Christ, who is the ultimate manifestation of this reigning king.
Yes. We have the perfect example of this in the Gospels.
It's so important because it moves this concept from abstract theology to a physical, real-world demonstration.
It does. We turn to the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4, verse 39. Jesus and his disciples are caught in a tremendous storm on the Sea of Galilee.
A literal flood lifting up its waves.
The most literal example possible. And the text says, "And he arose and rebuked the wind and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm."
What's so crucial there is that he didn't plead with the elements. He didn't ask them to stop. He issued a command.
He rebuked them.
He rebuked them. He said, "Peace, be still." And the language there implies silencing an aggressive, insolent creature. He commanded the sea and the wind, and they immediately and absolutely obeyed the voice that created them.
The very forces that were terrorizing these experienced fishermen had no choice but to acknowledge the authority of the king standing there in the boat.
This is the ultimate proof, then, that the king of Psalm 93 is mightier than the noise of many waters. He does not fear the floods.
He commands them. And we, as followers of this king, are called to live in the reality of his elevation, not in the reality of the flood's noise.
Which leads us immediately to the spiritual discipline that's derived from this overwhelming reality. Since our God is mightier, what is the first major practical step that the You Need Faith in Jesus team encourages us to take?
Well, the immense encouragement is that our problems, our deepest anxieties, the
Hmm.
cultural opposition we face, they are all dwarfed by the power of the king. They're loud, yes, but they are subordinate.
So what's the actionable step here?
Practical step one, the intentional reorientation of focus. We can call it refocusing. And this is a profound spiritual exercise. It requires an intentional daily shift of your cognitive and your spiritual attention away from the size of the waves,
The problem.
away from the problem, and toward the supreme commanding authority of the king who sits on high.
But let's be real here. How do we perform this reorientation when the anxiety is visceral, when the waves are literally crashing around us? I mean, a lot of listeners would admit that when they are facing financial collapse or a massive health scare, looking away from the threat feels impossible. It even feels irresponsible.
It does, and that's why it requires spiritual discipline, because you are commanding your soul to align with fact over feeling. You are intentionally stepping back from the immediate sensory input of the crisis, and you are actively recalling the truths of Psalm 93.
So you stop listening to the noise.
You stop listening to the noise of the many waters, that internal dialogue of fear and panic, and you begin to rehearse the fact that the Lord is clothed with strength, that his throne is eternal, and that he is mightier than this specific wave you're facing right now.
So it's a proactive choice. It's like a cognitive replacement therapy where we substitute the noise of chaos with the declaration of sovereignty. It's an assertion of faith grounded in the unchangeable nature of the king.
Precisely. And the You Need Faith in Jesus team strongly suggests this as a continuous process, not a one-time event you do and you're done.
Yeah.
Every single time the wave rises and lifts up its voice, we have to perform the reorientation again. We acknowledge that the king doesn't even get wet. He reigns on high. Our ultimate reality has to be defined by his elevation, not by the chaos at our feet.
This realization of supreme might, it leads us so naturally to the final verse, which grounds this power not just in his deeds, but in his character and his word, and establishes the required response from his people. So we come to the conclusion of this brief but incredibly dense psalm. The final verse transitions from God's absolute power over creation and chaos to the absolute reliability of his communication and the necessary condition of his dwelling place.
It establishes two essential certainties that define his kingdom and our relationship to it.
Let's read this concluding verse. It's Psalm 93, verse 5 from the KJV. Thy testimonies are very sure. Thy holiness becometh thine house, O Lord, forever.
You find here the two final unshakable pillars for everything we've just discussed: the reliability of his word and the requirement of his character. If the throne is mighty and eternal, these two things guarantee the success of his reign.
Let's focus on that first pillar, the sure word. Thy testimonies are very sure. What is the full weight of the word testimonies in this context?
Well, the Hebrew word is adot, and it refers not just to his commands or laws, but to his full witness, the covenant documentation, the solemn declarations he has made to humanity.
So essentially, the scriptures.
Essentially, his revealed truth, what we rely on in Scripture. And the text says they are very sure. The intensity the psalmist adds there, very sure, is so key. They're reliable, they're trustworthy, they're completely established. They're not guesses or hypotheticals or, culturally relative suggestions.
And for the listener who is trying to perform that intentional reorientation we just talked about, this is critical. If we're going to fix our eyes on the king, we need a reliable map of his nature and his promises.
Of course.
If his word were shaky, our confidence would be built on the very floods we're trying to escape.
You're exactly right. The stability of his word, his testimonies, is just as certain as the stability of the cosmos that he described in verse 1. They are the fixed points of reference in a dark and chaotic world. You can build your entire life, your ethics, your finances, your marriage, your philosophy of suffering. You can build it all upon these infallible declarations without any fear of them shifting or failing you.
This idea of the enduring certainty of God's revealed truth, it's a constant theme throughout Scripture, isn't it? It's always offering a stable light source amidst the uncertainty.
It is, and the New Testament echoes this with absolute clarity. We can look to 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 19, where Peter elevates the reliability of prophetic testimony.
Okay.
He writes, "We have also a more sure word of prophecy, whereunto ye do well that ye take heed, as unto a light that shineth in a dark place."
A light that shineth in a dark place. That image just perfectly captures the need for absolute certainty when the floods are at their most noisy and chaotic.
Yes.
The Word of God remains our reliable, immovable standard, regardless of how quickly the moral or the political landscape shifts around us.
And that leads us directly to the second pillar, the fitting character. Thy holiness becometh thine house, O Lord, forever.
What does it mean for holiness to become his house? That word becometh seems so carefully chosen.
It's a wonderful translation. The Hebrew term nava means suitable or fitting or even beautiful. So holiness, which is being set apart, morally pure, and distinct from all commonness and defilement, is the fitting, beautiful, and appropriate atmosphere of his dwelling. Holiness is the only truly adequate reflection of the king's character.
And the house of the Lord is a broad concept here, right? It's not just referring to a heavenly dwelling or the ancient temple in Jerusalem. It's referring profoundly to his people today.
Precisely. In the New Covenant, his house refers to the community of believers, the church, where he dwells by his Spirit. And if God is holy, his dwelling place must reflect that nature.
And this condition is not cultural or temporary?
No, the text is clear. It is forever. Just as his throne is established of old, the standard of purity for his people is eternal.
This moves us into the final, really urgent practical mandates that are based on the certainty of his word and the fittingness of his character. Let's outline the two final actionable steps, which the You Need Faith in Jesus team defines as essential spiritual disciplines.
Okay, practical step 2 is confidence in the testimony. We must move beyond just acknowledging that the Bible is true to acting as if it is infallibly sure.
What does that look like in practice?
It means making life-altering decisions. How you invest your time, how you manage conflict, how you prioritize your relationships, making those decisions based entirely on the certainty of the Scriptures, rather than on popular trends or your own emotional impulses. That certainty is the anchor against the chaos.
That requires a radical commitment, really. It's assuming that God's revealed will is superior to any human strategy we could come up with.
It does. And the final step flows directly from the required atmosphere of his dwelling place. Practical step 3 is the pursuit of purity. We are called to pursue a life of holiness. And this is important, not to earn his favor,
Right.
but because it is the beautiful, fitting, and necessary response to the Holy King who reigns forever and has chosen to reside in us.
So in essence, we stop focusing on trying to control the external floods, and we start focusing on aligning our internal life, our moral choices, our attitudes, our integrity, with the internal standard of the one who commands the floods.
Holiness is the proper atmosphere of his presence. If we really grasp the depth of the theology in Psalm 93, this eternal, powerful, girded king, the only logical response is to dedicate our lives to the pursuit of the purity that becometh thine house. And this is a core mandate emphasized repeatedly in the teaching of the You Need Faith in Jesus team.
This deep dive into Psalm 93 has been a profound journey, I think, through 5 short but monumental verses. Let's just try and synthesize the 5 key truths we've extracted, which collectively form this architecture of eternal stability.
Okay, first we analyze the current reign from verse 1. The Lord is king right now, actively clothed in inherent majesty and strength, and that results in cosmic stability.
Second, we explored the eternal foundation in verse 2. His authority is timeless. It's built on his existence from everlasting, which guarantees the immutability of his power and his promises.
Third, we acknowledge the reality of the acknowledged chaos in verse 3. The opposition, the floods of turmoil, anxiety, and rebellion. They are real, they are noisy, and they actively lift up their waves against us.
Fourth, we declared the superior might from verse 4. The Lord on high is overwhelmingly mightier than the noise of the many waters, a truth physically demonstrated by Christ when he commanded the literal storm.
And finally, we accepted the call to certainty and holiness from verse 5. His word is declared to be very sure, and a pursuit of holiness is the fitting response for his eternal dwelling place.
So what does this comprehensive picture mean for you, for the listener?
I think the crucial takeaway, which is the constant guiding theme in the source material we drew from, is that this stability and security you are looking for is not an internal feeling or a fleeting circumstance.
It's not something you can generate on your own.
No. It is an external, objective gift derived entirely from the existence and active rule of an eternal, unshakable king. Your stability is anchored outside of yourself. And when the waves are loudest, when the anxiety is most visceral, the discipline is to connect your life to that external stability through faith in his testimonies and a rigorous pursuit of his holiness. We look up and we remember that the one who defines all time is mightier than our temporary crisis.
Okay. So now for our final provocative thought for you to carry forward this week, something to really mull over. We've covered the eternal nature of the king and his overwhelming might. I want you to reflect deeply on one specific area of your life that is currently dominated by the noise of the floods.
Think of the loudest wave you are currently facing. It could be a conflict, a financial fear, a professional uncertainty, or maybe just that intense internal anxiety about the future.
How might you move beyond simply wishing that instability would stop and instead actively and intentionally perform the spiritual discipline of reorientation we talked about? How can you specifically surrender that particular loud instability to the authority of the king whose throne is established of old and whose power is definitively mightier than that noise?
This continuous process of surrendering control to his sovereignty is recommended by the You Need Faith in Jesus team as the daily exercise of radical faith. It is recognizing that the one holding the entire cosmos together is perfectly capable of stabilizing the chaos in your heart and in your circumstances.
We really encourage you to spend some serious time with Psalm 93 this week. Read it, think on it. It promises a radical peace simply by reminding you who reigns. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the eternal reign and unshakable majesty of God.
We look forward to connecting with you again soon as we continue seeking deep knowledge and practical truth in Scripture.
Reflect on the King on high. Farewell for now.